Vibe Talks. Vibe Talks. More than just music.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for Vibe 105 with a Sports VIBEtalks segment where we're going to be talking all things pro wrestling today. To help me out, I'm happy to be joined by my guest. He's making his return here to the Vibe 105 airwaves. He's a former sports entertainment / pro wrestling referee. He's Jimmy Korderas. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing great. I'm glad you said sports entertainment there because, I get it. There's a lot of diehard wrestling fans don't like that terminology, but it's exactly what it is. Yes, it's pro wrestling, but it's sports entertainment. When I watch a Leaf game, it's sports and I'm entertained. Well, hopefully by the Leafs, but you know what I mean? It's sports entertainment. It's okay.
And Jimmy, just this year for WWE, AEW especially, it's been interesting. We started off the year, everything in a pandemic still. We saw screens all over the place. Now they return with fans. So as a viewer and somebody who was entertained by it, how much of a difference was that for you to see pro wrestling now back with a live crowd in attendance?
It makes a world of difference. Yes, I understand when you can present the show and pipe in the crowd noise, the boos, the cheers, and all that sort of stuff. But without the actual people in the background that you can see visually on your television screen, it doesn't have the same effect. Yes, it helps. Don't get me wrong. It does help having that background noise, but it's not the same as seeing people up there having a good time, whether it's booing a bad guy or your heels and cheering your baby faces and whatever it may be. And I give a lot of credit to AEW because they were the first daily place there in Jacksonville. They didn't have a huge crowd there, but they had at least people there that were vocal, and it made a difference. And I know the Performance Center has their small crowd as well, but it's not the same as being in a big arena. It was kind of different for the main shows. But, this year's WrestleMania with a live crowd made a world of difference for that show too. So having a live crowd there is very important because the wrestlers, the talent, they feed off that live crowd and the reaction.
And also, this is an interesting time because, like you mentioned there, that WrestleMania crowd really added to the presentation of WWE's product. And back in that Performance Center and then also in the Thunderdome, we saw some talent come up and rise up and take advantage of the opportunity. Which wrestler on WWE's roster did you feel had the best breakout and really took advantage of this crowd coming back?
I don't want to say this is going to be taken out of context. This isn't a breakout. It's just that Roman Reigns has found his character, this current iteration of Roman Reigns, and he's hitting a home run with it. It's awesome. Here's a guy that people, as a babyface, people kept putting that label on him. Oh, he's the next John Cena. They're shoving him down our throat, and they want us to cheer him. But so they didn't climb on board because everybody wants to be that insider in the know guy. And then all of a sudden he turns heel, and people are like, oh, that's the Roman Reigns we like. But he's so annoying. Even those that want to like him in his current character are annoyed by him. So he's doing a fantastic job. Big E, big fan of Big E. I love how it began. I'm not so sure how it's progressed. I'd like to see a little more stability and more assertiveness in him as a champion, if that makes any kind of sense. But his booking, so to speak, I want to see his booking a little stronger. I want to see him as a strong babyface champion because he's a lot of fun. He's very entertaining to watch. Bobby Lashley is another one who won that title at WrestleMania over Drew McIntyre. Bobby's got all the tools, and what he may lack in speaking ability, he's not bad on the mic, but you've got MVP beside you. MVP is just magic on the mic. So those are a couple of them. And also Bianca Belair, getting to main event night 1 of WrestleMania with Sasha Banks. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. And the potential for her going in the future is very good.
I like how you mentioned there, about these stars, because it gets lost in transition a lot because some people say, okay, they're having this great run in the Thunderdome, but now when the crowd's back, now it tests if they're really connecting with everybody. So do you think they got it right with the stars that they're trying to put over with the audience, or is there one maybe that you were surprised that didn't really get that push out the gate when they were in the Thunderdome?
That, you know what? I know I'm kind of like surprised, like a lot of people, with Keith Lee, because, you know, when I saw him in NXT, everybody saw and said, oh, this guy has got money written on him. This guy looks like when he gets called up, I hate saying called up because, yes, we get it. NXT is developmental. When he gets called up to the main, this guy's got a license to print money, for lack of a better term. And I get it. Raw and SmackDown are a different presentation than NXT, but at the same time, the people who got invested in him saw him in one iteration on NXT, and then they kind of changed that when he moved up to the main roster, and people didn't get behind it. Maybe if they'd have kept that same kind of character and worked on that on the main roster and built him up, and instead of just introducing him onto the main roster, start him off like they used to do with vignettes, show little vignettes of him and what he's capable of, and introduce him to that main audience. Because when you think about it, the NXT audience is maybe half of what watches the main roster audience. So half your audience knows who he is, the other half doesn't. Introduce him to that half that doesn't. And the same with someone like a Malachi Black. I could just insert name here. It's the same sort of thing. We saw one iteration of him in NXT. He looked like he was starting to get over on the main roster, and then I don't know, he just went off the rails for some reason.
Yeah, and also, like, just mentioning NXT, they went through that big rebrand, NXT 2.0 now, and a lot of people are getting invested in some of these young talents coming up. It's also been a great place for main roster wrestlers like a Mandy Rose, who went down and starting to find traction there. So what have you made of this new rebrand in NXT 2.0? And do you think it's like something where it's like take a step back before you can go step forward in the future?
That's a nice way to put it. Take a step back before taking steps forward. Sometimes you have to sit back and reflect on what you have. I like the black and gold brand. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a great presentation. It was in my wheelhouse for personally, because I love the mix, old school meets new school. We talk about the evolution of pro wrestling. And I think people, a lot of talents today, young talents, want to take it from here to here without doing the steps in between, if you know what I mean, to gradually build it, to gradually evolve it. They want to jump ahead too far. I thought, in my opinion, NXT in the black and gold iteration was the perfect blend of old school meets new school and presented it well. And I get why they changed it to 2.0, because that style was completely different from what we were seeing on Raw and SmackDown. Yeah. So if this is truly a developmental territory, you're doing something different and not preparing them for what they're going to do on Raw and SmackDown. So what they're doing now, very similar to how they present Raw and SmackDown, and getting these young superstars ready to go up there. I think it helps them in that regard. But at the same time, I also love that the NXT Black and Gold was completely unique and different from the other presentations. So I'm like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I like the idea of presenting these young talents and getting them ready for the main roster. But at the same time, I kind of like that old black and gold.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you also see now, though, like NXT 2.0, they had that big match, the War Games, and it was like the black and gold are, giving them the ball to run with it. Some of those NXT 2.0 guys, and one of them that's really catching a lot of people's attention is Braun Breaker. What if you made it a Braun Breaker? Because a lot of people are saying maybe they should have given him his last name, like the Steiner name, get him to connect with the crowd. But this is also a way for him coming out on his own. Like, where are you on the fence with that one?
Yeah, again, that's one of those deals where, yes, you can really live off the name, the Steiner name, because it is a well-known name in pro wrestling and it's very recognizable. But at the same time, will that take away from the actual, because you look at him and the talent is there. Yes, he needs some honing. He needs some tightening of the screws, as some people like to say, but the talent is there. He's actually not too bad on the microphone as well. So he has all the tools in place. It's just a matter of putting it all together now. And sometimes the name, you take someone like a Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair is fantastic. But there are people out there who say she's living off her father's name. I think she's past that now. And I think, she has earned her stripes as one of the best female talents out on the planet right now. That's the way I look at it. If you give him the Steiner name right out of the gate, then people will associate him with that, as opposed to letting him develop his own identity, so to speak, even though he is a Steiner. Or as Johnny Gargano big bad booty nephew, which I loved. I thought that was awesome.
And what did you make of the math promo reference? You think he should go with that long term with Braun Breaker?
Yeah, why not? Well, hey, if it works, it kind of resonates. If it gets a pop, go with it until it doesn't.
I agree there. For those who's joining us here on Vibe 105, we're being joined by Jimmy Korderas here. And just to continue that with WWE, a big pay-per-view coming up, New Year's Day. They're going to have day one. This is something interesting. Nick Khan, who's part of the new front office team there in WWE, has really talked about their company maybe going and doing traditional dates instead of Sunday, doing Saturday, and picking dates out of the calendar that might help them. Do you think this will go on long term, this New Year's Day event?
Possibly. I mean, like, a lot of people are home on New Year's Day. The only problem you run into with a day like New Year's Day is in the United States. Obviously, there's a lot of football going on. There are bowl games. There's a lot of competition. So maybe choosing a day like, for example, maybe the day after New Year's Day, or something like that. I love it. I like the tradition of having it on a Sunday night, because usually Sunday nights are relaxing nights and there's not a whole lot going on other than, like I mentioned, NFL during NFL season. But picking days like that is interesting, but at the same time, again, you're battling other elements, not only on the television world, but people on those holidays sometimes either just want to lay back and be with family, or maybe go out and do something. You know what I mean? So it is a challenge, but that's why I'm glad I'm not in that front office position, because that would be a tough one for me to decide.
And this event, like, they're bringing out everybody for it. They're building it as if it's a major pay-per-view here. And you got the Miz versus Edge, who's coming back, a special match for Edge. What have you made of Edge's return? Because a lot of years, like, I was a fan watching him in high school, and he had to retire. And then now I'm past university, and Edge is coming back, a guy I grew up watching. You worked with Edge, Canadian hero here. So what have you noticed out of this second run out of Edge?
Edge is, you could tell that he's having fun and he's enjoying it, and you could feel it. It's reflecting on us that he is having a great time. And above all, from a business standpoint, he's getting the reaction that the company desires. He comes out and he gets a huge pop, and that's a genuine thing. And that's, again, feeding off that crowd reaction like we were talking about earlier. And when he goes to the ring, he's a great talker. See, it's one of the things I don't think people give him enough credit for. I think he's very underrated for his promo ability. He's a great talker. He tells great stories in the ring, because that's what it's meant to be. I love using this line, and I've said it I don't know how many times, like Rip Rogers said back in the day, in pro wrestling, we don't sell motion, we sell emotion. And Edge is one character that gets you emotionally invested in him as a babyface, and he's brilliant at it. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased and he's my buddy, but that does help us.
And he's going to be, like, taking on the Miz here, who it looks like he's, in recent years, I've noticed more people like give him the respect for all the years he's put in. You were there when he came into WWE, and maybe it wasn't that kind of reception. He's coming from the reality TV world. Like, I even saw him on an episode of Fear Factor. So he's done every reality competition imaginable, goes through Tough Enough. I guess, what was your first initial feeling on the Miz, and has it changed in recent years?
Oh, it definitely changed, because I was there. They referenced it in the promo, the infamous chicken eating incident. I was there and witnessed it, because I don't want to give away whose bag he was eating the chicken over, but I was walking with him into the locker room when we both saw him there, and I just went, oh no. I'll say it, Scott Armstrong. Here's a legend, a veteran, for family name of Armstrong. And, and Scotty, man, I'm giving this away. I can't believe Scotty looked over at him, and he looks at me, he goes, he's eating chicken with me. And then he just looks at Miz and says, hey, don't forget to get the bones down there in the corners of the bag. And Miz just laughed, right? Oh, no. And he just went, I'm going to kill him. And William Regal came over, and we both said, Scotty, calm down. And that's when one of the veterans of the locker room decided it was time for Miz to change in a broom closet.
Oh, wow.
And he got kicked out of the locker room for a while. And that's when I thought to myself, this kid ain't going to last. He ain't going to be here long. But, I give him a lot of credit. He stuck it out. He took all the, what that everybody gave him, and he learned. He learned how to interact in the locker room, how to be one of the boys in the back and all that sort of stuff. And, I give him a lot of credit. And he's actually pretty good. He's a pretty good talent. He's very entertaining. And again, you talk about believability. When he talks and he acts like a jerk, you believe he's a jerk.
Speaking of wrestlers who have that believability, Brock Lesnar made his return also, and Pat McAfee, I guess, was everybody's people's announcer there, because I think that's everyone's reaction. He called him the alpha male of our species. What did you like? You were there when Brock Lesnar came in too. So when you first saw Brock Lesnar, what came to your mind, and what do you make of this whole return?
No, when Brock Lesnar first came in, you saw the raw talent there. How could you not? And you the imposing figure, and you thought this guy's right in Vince's wheelhouse. What he like, big, strong, athletic, great amateur, great technical ability. He just didn't grasp the concept right out of the gate of, okay, I got to take it a little easy on these guys. Then he eventually learned the process of, okay, we're going to go out there, we're going to have a good, strong physical match. We'll apologize afterwards. But he always, at that time, needed a mouthpiece, someone to speak for him, Now we're starting to see some character out of him, a little bit of that character, a little bit of the Saskatchewan coming out of him. You know what I mean? With that, what do you call it? The man bun? He looks like he's back and he's enjoying himself too. It resonates. You can tell when someone's just putting on an act like they are not having a good time or not having a good time, or you can tell when someone is really enjoying themselves. You can tell in this iteration, now that he's back, he is enjoying himself. He's having fun again.
And do you think like it's something where like all these years he's been back, like I understand why they maybe booked him the presentation of his character the way they did, but you see Brock Lesnar come back now and it's a different character, different look. Do you think they missed out not having this a little sooner?
No, I mean, a change is good when you do it. And, this iteration of Brock Lesnar, now that he came back, I don't think anybody expected to see him come back in overalls and the man bun and the whole thing. It's a different look. And that, if anybody can make it work, he can, or like I said, tell him otherwise.
And is there an interaction with Brock over the years that really sticks out to you? Like, what was he like when you worked with him early on in his WWE career?
He was fine. He was cordial and everything. But, when you could tell when he wanted his space, you just kind of let him. And when you worked his match, you just you walked up to him. Hey, Brock, I'm refereeing your match tonight. All right, cool. Says, you ask him what the finish is going to be and he'll let you know. And is there anything I need to know? And that was the one thing he had that some of the old school guys back in the day had. And says, I may need you for this, but if there's anything else, I'll let you know. Okay, whatever you want. I'm follow your lead.
Were you afraid that he was going to maybe call an audible and give you an F5 or do a German suplex on you?
I knew that it wouldn't be a German or anything like that. But if he wanted to do an F5, I'd never taken one before. If he called it, who's going to tell him otherwise? It's a weird comparison to make here, but like in WrestleMania 24, when we were going over the match and I took the bump in that match. Yeah. And Taker looked at me and says, "Are you okay with taking the big boot?" I said, "It's WrestleMania. It's you. I am cool with it. Take my head off. I don't care." You know what I mean? It was like, I'm taking a big boot from The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? This is the coolest thing ever.
That's a memorable moment, I'm sure, there, because Undertaker, if you're going to call it, like, is it more common, I guess, back then to call audibles in the ring, or do you think now wrestlers, they really want to have everything mapped out before they go out there?
That's one of the big changes that I think matches today are more, I hate to use the word choreographed, but more structured from beginning to end than they used to be. Like, I'll give you an example. Back in the day when I first started refereeing, it was like, okay, we'll go out there, we'll do some chain wrestling, we'll exchange a little bit, blah, blah, blah. Then I'll cut you off, I'll get some heat on you, then you make your big comeback and we'll go to the finish. That was the discussion. It wasn't like, okay, then I'll go to the top rope and I'll do a twisting, burning 450 hammer Phoenix splash, and then you catch me with a thing, and then you know what I mean? It was like, I feel like today sometimes it's a little too, and I hate using the word, a little too choreographed.
Yeah. And speaking of choreographed, perfect transition to AEW, where a lot of people are thinking that you hate AEW. What are your thoughts when you hear that? Because I know you criticize constructively and you have a lot of valid points about it, but what are your thoughts on their product now that they're past that 1 year mark and they got another year under their belt?
Look, I wish nothing but the best for AEW, because if they do well, then the industry as a whole does well. And I'm a fan of the industry, not just WWE and AEW, but also Impact Wrestling. Feel bad for ROH taking. Hopefully they're back. They come back at some point. But if they don't, thank you, ROH. But I want look, NWA, MLW, you pick them, whatever. Support your local indie wrestling if you're a wrestling fan. But the only issue I have with AEW, yes, they're very entertaining, but they're catering to a specific hardcore audience that they have already got on board. I think they need to adjust some of their program. Like, they don't have to change their whole presentation, in my opinion, but they've got to do some tightening of the screws and little alterations here and there to bring some other eyes to their product to help grow their audience. And that's the name of the game in the business. And you can throw out numbers about ratings and demos. This demographic and the rating is blah, blah, blah. But if your numbers aren't growing to better levels, for lack of a better term, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Yes, you're catering to that hardcore audience. They've bought in, all in. There's a group out there who think they can do no wrong, even though, look, I can watch it, be entertained by it, but also go, hey, that shouldn't have happened, or they should have done maybe this way, or stuff like that. And especially being a former referee, I kind of notice little things with the referees as well. That's different, but I could also be entertained by it. You can critique and be entertained at the same time. I just think they're catering right now to a specific audience, and they need to grow that audience and think outside the box that they're in right now.
And yeah, that audience, hardcore wrestling fan base, and they bring in CM Punk, who had a long layoff there. What did you make of that signing? Do you think that was the signing they should have gone after, or do you think it was more of a, cater to their fan base and it might not have that growth that maybe going and signing like a Brock Lesnar was a free agent would have had?
Brock Lesnar is a more internationally known star, so definitely that would have been a bigger get for them. And especially on the schedule they're running, because they're not running live events or house shows. Yeah. So it's right in his wheelhouse. He doesn't want to go on the road on a full-time schedule. So, and CM Punk is a good get. Don't get me wrong. He's an awesome get, especially after being away from this from so long. People, especially the hardcore fans, are dying to see him come back. My only issue is we're seeing him every week now. Yeah. So it doesn't feel special, if you know what I mean. Yes, now he's working a program with Magic once they get it really going. But if they're going to do mic work back and forth every week, I don't want to see it every week. I want it to be special. I want it to, maybe MJF comes out, and then when Punk comes out, MJF leaves. I have no time for you. Bye. And speaking of MJF, there's a guy who gets being a heel in today's world. You don't ingratiate yourself, not this gray area where, he's a cool kind of heel. No, he's a big, a jerk, for lack of a better term. I don't know how far we can go language wise here. I'm going to keep it clean, but he's a huge jerk. And a guy so young to get it so quickly is very astonishing. And there is a future for this young man. There's a big future ahead for this young man.
And what AEW's done is also like with MJF, they have some of these younger stars that they've been given a manager, a mouthpiece to come out, cut promos to them. They do the in-ring work. And a lot of them have maybe not been in the mix for a long time. Then they come back and all of a sudden there's no program for them. Is there a young talent on their roster that you've maybe been surprised that you haven't seen more of in the last year?
Wow. It's, I'm surprised. I mean, you look up and down the roster, and this one's going to catch people the wrong way for sure. I know, and it's Adam. Here's a young man now who's now their champion, who's their world champion, but I don't think they have in my opinion, presented him in the way that could capitalize on his abilities and his stature, if you know what I mean. Yes, I get this whole cowboy, this cowboy crap and stuff like that. I'm keeping it clean. But at the same time, it was a nice little elongated story being told with him and Kenny Omega. But I didn't feel the bang. I didn't feel the pop when he won that title. It was like, okay, cool. He won the title. What are you going to do for me now? And I'm not getting that, like you look at a Roman Reigns, for example, I hate to compare, but you look at a Roman Reigns and, the show's built around him. The show doesn't feel like it's built around their world champion, and I think it should be. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And like AEW, I see what you're saying there, like the world champion and what Kenny Omega, when he was a champ, he was going on to different promotions outside of AEW, winning their titles. And one of them, though, that they have a partnership that they didn't really target was New Japan and having Kenny Omega go back there. But they kind of tease the idea of like a Kazuchika Okada maybe sometime down the road coming. Those two guys have a lot of chemistry. Do you think their matches in New Japan would translate to a North American audience?
I think it translates to the hardcore audience that they've already got, in their house that have already bought into the product. That style is the Japanese style is I think a little bit of a tough one to bring into casual audience. If they're fans that are more into like the MMA style and the hard hitting style, they might climb on board, who aren't familiar with the New Japan style. But at the same time, again, using this term, sports entertainment, people who want to be entertained might not find that style as entertaining.
Do you think Kenny Omega can, because he's had different styles, like I saw a death match where that was a little sometimes overboard in some people's eyes, but like the way he's been able to adapt, you think he might be able to, if there's a guy to make it work, you think he would be the one to make it work?
He's very talented. Kenny Omega can do pretty much anything. He can do technical wrestling. He can do high flying. He can do that, snug style, for lack of a better term. So if there's anybody who could probably help transition it, he would definitely be in there. I think Bryan Danielson is another one who could help transition that as well. They do have some talent that could do it. It's just, I just don't know if it translates well to the North American audience. That's all. Other outside that hardcore wrestling base.
A couple final questions here with Jimmy Korderas here on Vibe 105. Jimmy, also AEW, what they do have is all these legends all around, and see Sting getting back in the ring, which could have been a risk. A lot of people thought, but he's been able to make it work. Christian's back in the ring now. What have you made of to see like the legends get involved in programming?
No, I enjoy the legends because like I said earlier, if you want to bring different eyes onto your product, like maybe the lapsed fan who's kind of gone away from pro wrestling and you want to bring them back, there's some fans who remember Sting, who remember Christian, who remember some of these talented, superstars from back in the day. Maybe they could draw them back in. And the biggest thing that these guys can offer, especially a guy like Christian too, and you look at the people that they have backstage, is the young talent. Hopefully they are listening to them. Because, yes, we live in a world now where sometimes, oh, that's old school. That was back in the day. That won't work today. Look, I like to compare it to this. The information you get from these legends and icons that you have can work today if you tweak it a little bit to fit today's society. It's like another example I like to use. When the wheel was invented, it was made of stone. Then they made it out of wood, and then it became rubber. Then it was vulcanized rubber, and then it was run flat tires and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the wheel is round. It never changes its shape. And I look at pro wrestling the same way. You can evolve it. You can change the style a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's all about a heel versus a baby face. And you get behind the baby face. You try to get behind the baby face and you want to see him beat this guy's butt. You know what I'm saying? So, how you do it in the presentation can change, but at the end of the day, that's what makes sense. Areas of gray don't sell tickets, in my opinion.
A little transition to just wrestling in general. Bret the Hitman Hart, Canadian legend. He's going to get that big honor here in Canada. About time, too. I was surprised he wasn't in there beforehand, but When you hear Bret Hart now, Canada Walk of Fame, sports in this country kind of don't recognize pro wrestling at times, but it's good that Bret Hart's getting that recognition. What do you make of this honor that Bret Hart's going to get?
It is incredible, and as someone who is honored to have been able to call him a friend and work and just hang out with him, I am so happy to see this happen. Bret is a good dude, and it's amazing seeing him as a young man mature into what he became, the Hitman, the best there is, the best there was, the best that ever will be. But not only that, but the knowledge he passed on to the young people who came after him, and how many people looked up to him and took so much away from what he had to teach and what people learned from him. A lot of Canadian talent across the board, and of course, obviously around the world. But he's one of those guys that also gave back, and you know what? Couldn't be happier for him.
I agree there. It's a long-awaited honor there, because I'm surprised once it was announced. I thought, okay, wasn't he in already? And you look at the feedback on Twitter, and everyone was shocked too. And it's a good thing they finally recognized them. But another thing there in wrestling, like WrestleMania was announced this year. It's going to be 2 days again. Are you like on board with this idea of a 2-day event, or would you prefer if it was 1 day, the whole event?
It's interesting. I like the idea of having a 2-day event, because especially for those attending live, because then you can make a whole trip and weekend out of it as opposed to going to one event. And I know a lot of other companies tend to gravitate to the city that WrestleMania is at and try to capitalize on the incoming crowds. But at the same time, from a company standpoint, it makes sense because you have 2 nights on, well, I guess I don't know if it's pay-per-view now because they're on Peacock down there, but around the world, it's still pretty much pay-per-view, I guess. And I don't mind the idea of having it 2 nights. It allows them to showcase more of their talent on a big stage and give them an opportunity to perform at WrestleMania, as opposed to trying to cram as much in as you can to one night. Instead of having 1 6-hour show, you can have 2, 3, or 3 and a bit hour shows. I think it's easier to sit through 2 shows like that than it is one long. It's like sitting through 2 football games, so to speak. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And another thing about just on WrestleMania, it's going to be coming up on an anniversary in 2022. 20 years ago, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Rogers Center, formerly known as SkyDome. You were just there that night. The atmosphere of SkyDome when those two went at it. What was it like just being in the arena for that? It was indescribable. And I know a lot of times, I didn't referee the match. Mike Chioda refereed the match, but we watch in the monitors in the back and we absorb everything there. But this was so special. I went out around the stage, and I went out actually into where the crowd was to feel that audience, because even now I'm getting like goosebumps and thinking about it. I have never heard anything like that before. And it, like I said, it's indescribable. You have to, for those who were there and witnessed it live, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And hopefully moments like that, or at least a moment like that, will return at some point, because they are very few and far between. And all I can say is I was amazingly happy and glad that I was there to witness it. It was special. Yeah, like I remember watching it as a kid, and you hear Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler going crazy on commentary. The crowd when Hogan starts hulking up. I guess, did the TV audience, does that do it justice, or was it even crazier when it was there? You know what? When I watched it back, to me, it felt like they toned down the audience noise so that you can actually hear Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, because it was that loud and that deafening inside that, you're thinking it's a big dome, but it's covered. It was loud. And again, watching it back, it felt like they had to tone that down a little bit just so you can hear the commentary. Wow. It's a great story there. I can't believe that's going to be 20 years in March 2022. So definitely everyone's going to be talking about that. But Jimmy, before we wrap up here, how can our listeners and viewers here follow you on social media? Oh, you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Jimmy Korderas, and
on Instagram at Real Jimmy Korderas, and of course, Facebook. Those are my social media accounts where you can catch me on weekdays doing my daily ref and rants, where I find something that I critique and would like to see maybe done a little better or differently, let's say, on all shows. I critique everybody. There's no agenda here. It's just me making my little observations from a ref's point of view, if you smell what the ref is cooking. And I'm just having fun with it. And I hope people understand that it's there to make fun. And also you can get Reffing Rant t-shirts at prowrestlingtees.com. There's my cheap plug. And hopefully one day we'll have some of these ready for people. The coffee mugs, which I have a little bit in here too.
Definitely highly recommend that follow. Jimmy, I'd like to thank you for sharing your time and coming on here to recap the year that was in pro wrestling and sharing some of these stories. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. All the best to you, buddy. And we'll talk again soon.
And now back to your Vibe 105.